So
Hello.
awesome, we're here. It's another full disclosure, and we're trying to catch up and make sense today of the first quarter of 2021, and just kind of do a market update. And we have our great friend Sean Herrera here, our mortgage broker extraordinaire, to give us the kind of the lending side of the whole scoop. But if if you were to use 1 to 2 words to describe the current quarter, the first quarter of 2021, how would you describe it? I'm going to ask Haley first. How would you describe it, Haley?
I'd probably use more colorful language than I'm gonna use in reality, but I would say hot, hot, hot,
Hot,
hot,
hot,
hot, hot,
hot,
hot.
hot, hot. That's 3 words.
Busy,
I
a
said
lot of
two.
hot. All right, fine. Create busy and hot.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And
Competitive.
yeah. Sean, what would you say? A couple of words for
Uh,
the first quarter.
It was intense. Intense is the only way for me to describe it.
Yeah, yeah. And so what can we say, right? There we have to talk about there's a couple of different markets. There's, somebody who's buying a single family, there's somebody who's buying a condo, and there's somebody who's buying a multi-unit, right? So they're not all created equal. Shall we talk about where the flame burns the hottest? What word what category are we talking about when we talk about the hottest of these three categories?
Single families.
Yeah, single family
Okay.
for sure.
Single families are they're nuts. And let's talk a little bit about um, pricing and trying to, because one of the things that we're having difficulty with at the moment is what is something going to sell for. And I'm actually going to share a couple of graphs to kind of get into this. Here is we're talking about San Francisco now, and I think this would relate for the East Bay as well. But this is the Case Shiller 20-year price index, and it's just talking about price expansion, kind of how, because a lot of times people, I think that, you when they say in the newspaper, oh, the market's gone up by X amount, they just kind of see this constant thing. But a lot of times the way it's growing is there's an expansion point, and then you bounce around in this area for a while, and then there's a drop, and then there's an expansion point, and then you bounce around for a little while. So well, does that make sense? So I think jumping in on this graph, you can see here's, the when where things were lending practices were, quite lax, you could say, right, Sean, in
Hmm.
2005, 2006, 2007. And we went through a huge expansion in pricing there. Then the financial crisis hit, and there was a huge dip in pricing. And then suddenly, in around 2010 here, there's this spike. What was that little expansion there, Sean? Was there a
There,
drop in rates?
yeah, I think that's kind of where lending started to make a little bit of a comeback. It was really uncertain through '08 into '09, and then things started to open up a little bit more. So
And
I think
then
money
yeah,
became more available again.
more of it. And then we kind of
Hmm.
went through this, a little dip again. And then in 2011 and 12 is really where the expansion out of the financial crisis came. So that's where
Hmm.
property started to regain the value that they'd lost here. And then we've kind of bounced around in this steady kind of market for a while. And here we are at this period in time where we're, we're like, jumping up, doubling up on kind of, we had a little dip, And that dip there was when rates, I think 2019, that's when rates, the 30-year fixed was getting up to about 5% at this point right here. So I think it
Yep.
really shows right there on the 19 there.
Yeah, if you look at right between December 17 and September 18, that little downward hill, in the third and fourth quarter of 18 is when rates were almost at 5%, and then they flattened out. So that's just kind of shows that rates are driving this a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So so that's, we're in definitely one of these expansion periods. I'm going to go actually, the other issue is supply, and that is really the kind of the big issue. And one of the things they talk about is kind of the, if nothing was to sell, if everything that was on the market right now was your supply, back this time last year, we had a 4.5 month supply of inventory. Or actually, is this talking about, this is in weeks, I think, or
Monthly.
It is monthly. And right now, and this is counting everything. This is condos, multifamily, single families. And right now we're more than nearly 60% off of that at only 2. So supply is really the big driver here with this, right? Unprecedented demand and just
Very
crazy.
restricted. Yeah. I think in March this year, we learned that, and I mean, no surprise, that the median single family and condo prices were up month over month. Single families, I think, rose almost 10% year over year on pricing.
Right.
And which, March last year, we were in a regular pre-COVID life. But it's just, I guess I'm a little, I don't have any words for what's happening now.
Well, one of the things that I find extraordinary is you take away one of the things economists are saying is the expanded savings. Now that people are not spending their money on services, they're spending it on goods, and they're putting their attention into real estate. Were people spending so much money on dining out and lattes at Starbucks and concerts and all of that stuff that it's created this
hundreds
additional
of dollars and
hundreds of thousands of dollars? I find that one a little
What are
tough.
these vacations that people were taking that were equal to a down payment on a house? I want to know.
Yeah. So Sean, how do you speak to that? Like what
where's the money coming from?
So I think a lot of the money came from the market. Crypto's gone off the rails. I think there's been more money available through the market. Like if you were able to invest March of 2020 to where it's gone now, really take advantage of that dip, then there's been money made in the market. And I really think a lot of it is the rates are lower. So money's cheaper. So if you're paying cash, you can wait for lower prices if you want to. I don't know where those are coming from, but you could wait. But when the cost of money is lower, I think that people can afford more, right? So that drives them to do more faster. And I also think being stuck in your house for a few months really gave people an idea of, okay, after sitting here, I know what I want. And it kind of triggered that buying momentum. Mm-hmm. And then the remote, like in our area, the remote work situation, it's no longer I have to live in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. People have moved all over the place now. So there's just all these factors that came together at the same time, I think, to create the perfect storm. So you have more demand than I think ever, and you have less supply than ever.
Yeah. I also think there's a common kind of misconception potentially outside the city, San Francisco, that people left and didn't come back. And that's just like not how it happened, like some people left, but we are still in a scenario where we are going up against multiple offers on 99% of properties, Like
Right.
condos are back, if you will. And it's, people didn't just, there wasn't this mass exodus that people thought would happen. I think that also goes to show like, we're a city that is a very livable city that is not like New York, right? Where you're like trapped in a box and it's, during COVID, that was terrible. Like people actually want to live in San Francisco because of all the green space and like, it's more like a big town. So I think that was just kind of a thing that people thought would happen. People still think is happening and isn't happening. Didn't happen.
Well, and at the same time, that misconception probably triggered people to think they're getting a deal. Oh, everyone's leaving San Francisco. I'm going to go buy a condo right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that in itself creates competition. And now you're seeing people actually have to come back. I have a friend who works at Pinterest. Of all companies, I thought they'd, never have to come back. He bought a house in Arizona and he gets an email that says, hey, so we kind of are into human connection again. So he's going to be coming back, right? So that'll just create even more demand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. And the other thing on the condo market for the return of that, where a lot of people who were larger kind of condo buyers in the past, pre-COVID in San Francisco, they kind of abandoned the market for Marin, for the East Bay, for the Peninsula. They went out and they were like, hey, you know what? We don't want that large urban condo right now. We want a single family home. And those markets are, it's just as insane as it is in the San Francisco single family home market. The East Bay market is
equally
not, it's more nuts. It's more nuts.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those people are returning back and saying, hey, you know what? There's better value in that larger condo for me in San Francisco. So and
yeah, a client closed last month. That was exactly that. They looked throughout Oakland and they were like, forget this, and they bought in San Francisco like that, and they're very happy they did.
Yeah, that's totally, and then there is that boomerang kind of buyer too, where they moved out and then they're like returning back to the city, either because their work is bringing them back, or they're like, hey, you know what, I'm kind of getting a little bored of where I was out in the boonies. So yeah.
The boonies.
So yeah. What does the world of rates look like? Because everybody's talking that it looks like rates are going to rise. Like that seems to be kind of a lot of reports and stuff that I'm reading. What do you have to say to that, Sean?
I think that's a very easy prediction to make, considering they've been as low as they have for like 6 months. And we actually saw them increase already. They increased from February through March, April. And we just started to feel a little bit of a slide over the last 2 weeks, and we've kind of hit a new normal. So, we went from being in the mid twos. Now we're up to, we got up to like 3.25-ish on a 30-year fix. And now we're hovering around that 2.99, 2.875. So we went up 0.5%, came back down 0.25%. It looks like we have a new normal. But of course, rates are going to have to go up eventually. I don't think it's going to happen soon. And again, the cause was inflation. If you print $2 trillion in money, you're going to have inflation. If the value of the dollar goes down, the cost of the dollar has to go up. And I think as the economy now opens back up, that'll stem off the inflation a little bit, and you'll see rates level off like we've seen. But next year after, rates are, remember, January 2020, a 30-year fix was like 3.875. And we were so excited because that was the lowest of the lows, right? So we have such horrible long-term memory loss as humans, we forget. And so, that's an important factor if you're considering buying right now is, the cost of money. It's as close to free as it gets right now.
Yeah, I think that's also causing a little bit of, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but the rush to buy, right? Because everybody's like freaking out that the rates are going to go up. So they're like, well, let's just get in now, which, like, fair enough. If you're looking for that 30-year fix, you want to secure that really great rate. But it is important to remember that it's still going to be a great rate as compared to history.
What what can we do to improve inventory? Do you have a magic wand that just is makes inventory appear on the market? Have you the secret, Sean?
Well, no. I think, sorry about that. I think that if we have, so what was the bill that passed where the retired people could, the tax, I'm forgetting the bill that passed.
Prop 19. Prop 19.
So I've had two people that took advantage of that so far. But we haven't seen, I haven't seen a ton of inventory from it, and I didn't expect to. I just didn't think that was going to create enough. I don't know. I don't know where the inventory comes from. And the other thing so my mentor has won the Zillow Crystal Ball Award 3 times. He's the only guy to win it more than once. He won it in 2020 and 2021. And I did an interview on this with him last year because this just seemed unsustainable to see values continue to rise like this. And he's like, the average first-time buyer is between 30 and 35. And if you look at the chart of when that age group's born, there's more and more of them every year for at least the next 4 years. So this isn't a problem that's going away anytime soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that some people, there's a question of will the normal seasonality kind of start to return in the middle to the later part of the year in terms of people getting vaccinated, schools getting out, do people leave and travel and then put their houses on the market because now they can get out of them? Do buyers go and travel so there's a little less competition? That's kind of the theory that I'm hoping for and working with, that people have been just kind of waiting until there's a little more freedom in life to make that happen.
And we get the world where we get more inventory on the market and more distracted buyers. So you get a pump in supply and a drop in demand. So you get a little bit of a even keel. So it's that we're moving into that stretch now, right? Because that's July is really the time that will come to play.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where we are moving. And then I don't know, it seems just to put a shout out on multifamilies. For me, for anybody looking for where some value is in the marketplace, I think there's some value in somebody who will live in a multi-unit building where you can live in one unit and rent out 1 or 2 other units, because rents have fallen. So that has caused a kind of a change in now the pricing of a lot of these buildings, depending on location and that kind of stuff, it differs on what's fallen. But the competition for them is not as, is not as much. There was a time where, okay, you would have to compete at that price. But now you might be, one of the only buyers if, maybe it'll be a situation where there might only be 2 or 3 or 4 buyers rather than what did we have recently, Haley? And
we've seen 26.
26 offers on a property.
I had 72.
72.
Is that a lot? 72 a lot, and we won, but 72, and that was in Manteca. If anyone knows where Manteca is, that's I think 2 hours east of San Francisco. I mean, Is
that the whole town bidding on that one house? What is that?
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's unbelievable.
Manteca has a huge one of those Bass sporting goods stores on the side of
Bass Pro Shops.
Yeah, Bass Pro. My kids, every time we go by there, my kids are like, "We have to stop the car. We want to go in there. Stop the car."
Cool place.
Wow, 72.
I am that kid.
Yeah, me too.
Another thing that I try to just, with all this kind of going on, so you're talking about 22 offers, this and that, as buyers are thinking of where do we offer? We looked at the comps, that's not a very good indicator anymore. So what do we do? I think it really comes down to, if you're waiting for this shift, you have 22 offers and the demand goes down by 50%, there's still 11 offers, right? Yeah. And that's an important consideration is, okay, there's 22 offers and one gets it. So I got to go fight 21 other people on the next one. And that one's going to be more expensive and rates might be higher. So I just instill the fan of like, the sooner you get in, the better, and go from there.
What about, last question, throw it out there, appraisals. We look at certain things and we're trying to figure out what might this go for. And then the next question is, are we going to have an appraisal issue?
What will it go for?
Yeah. Like, are we going to have an appraisal issue? We have not had any appraisal issues. We've talked with other, teams who've had appraisal issues. You're on the front line as the lender on all around. And what do you say to that, John?
I think it depends on the area. So I'll give you two quick Oakland examples, or Oakland, one's in Albany, one's in Oakland. The Albany one was listed at $1,095,000. They're in contract for $2 million. That appraised with a different company for $1,600,000. And this is what I hate, especially with that specific market, is this, hey, let's list ridiculously low attitude because there's enough data to know what the game is. So it's not really necessary to do that anymore, but they do it anyways. So anyways, it appraises for $1,600,000. The buyer freaks out, right? We're in contract for $2 million. We got to come up with an extra $400,000. They switched over to me, and the realtor that I work with, I went through that appraisal. Like, there's only 4 comps to use in Albany. So what we're hoping for is that the appraiser I work with uses the same data in a better way. And our appraisal came in, I think, at $1,775,000. So I knew we weren't going to get to $2 million, right? And I think there was one sale at $1,850,000. So they're like, it should be a no-brainer at $1,900,000. So they went into it non-contingent, and why you would say $1,900,000 off of $1 million, you can't just assume that they can work off from one comp. So I think that's an important factor, is you have to, it's 2 separate pieces. It's what is it going to sell for? Like, what is the price? What am I willing to pay? What is the price for this property? And then what is it going to appraise for? We have to really go into it looking at both sides. I have one that we just did. This is the Oakland. Yeah. So this one's in Oakland. Price is $1,700,000. And it appraised for $1,400,000. And I was shocked, went through it. And the appraiser there was more comparables available at $1,600,000 to $1,650,000 that he ignored. He didn't do the comp he used as his number one comp, which if it's the first comp, it means it's the comparable that the appraiser feels is the most like for like.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was from October, and he didn't do a time adjustment at all. So he's basically saying that this property from October to May, no change in the market whatsoever. And we all know that's not the case. At the same time, he said there was 27 offers and it was high demand. I'm like, it just isn't lining up. So I did what's called a reconsideration of value. I gave a bunch of comparables that are closer at our price, more recent sales, closer in proximity, and said, hey, would you please reconsider your opinion on this? And at the same time, where's the time adjustments? Where's this and that? Now that gets tricky because we can't force an appraiser to change their opinion of value, right? And that's all an appraisal is one person's opinion of value. That's all it is. So that's where you have to you got to be careful with it. You have to kind of understand that the appraised value it's a look in the rear view mirror. It doesn't mean that if I pay more than the appraised value that I'm overpaying, because now your house is the next comparable. Like the Albany one, will be the next house that sells in Albany. It'll be an easy appraisal because there's now 3 comparables at that price point. We're the third one that's at that $1.8 to $2 million price. So it's just the things you have to look at.
Yeah. And where, out of curiosity, where on your request for a price reconsideration, how did the appraiser react and what happened?
I just sent it out yesterday. So I've only had to do that. I think this is the first one I've done this year, but I have done them in the past, and sometimes the appraisals will come back and they'll bring the value up, right? Other times they won't, because again, here's why, thanks for the data, but here's why I didn't use it, right? So they're justifying their position. Now, if I still at that point think that's a bad appraisal, I'll ask we have an escalation process that if I win, it lets me go back and get where'd I go? It lets me go back and ask for another appraisal. So you can't, they call it value shopping. You can't, if you don't get an appraisal you don't like, it doesn't mean you can just ask for a new one. you cannot value shop. So we have to do a really deep, that appraisal, my write-up, the appraisal, the appraiser's response all get evaluated. And then if the department that reviews these at our company comes back and says, you know, we agree, they do like a multi-page write-up to justify why we have to go get a second appraisal. When I've done that, it's worked out fine. And again, this is, I don't know, I've maybe done that 2 times in the last 2 years. So maybe I have to do my third, but it's very uncommon.
Yeah.
At least for us, it's very uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, amazing. Any finishing parting comments here? We've been on longer than we expected. What there's so much to talk about. We could tell stories about what's going on in this first quarter of this year for hours and hours and hours. So, what predictions, rates? It sounds like staying low. We found we're bouncing around on this kind of 3 kind of floor is where we're at, and we just don't see an end in sight there. The stock market still seems to be churning out money to the world. It's like it seems there's just going from one new strength to another. Haley, supply, we're hoping maybe more people vacationing, more people able to move in the summer. We have a number of those kind of listings ourselves kind of coming on where that's what's happening. People are that's where they're able to get out of Dodge and kind of allow the property to be available, because showing is you know, if it's not available where you can set up a schedule where everybody gets their 30-minute window to be able to go in and see the property, it's it has a tougher time kind of going through the process. So yeah, incredible. One of those 2021. It's one to remember. Sean, when we're looking for you, how do we find you? How do we? I love there's a shadow on your back wall. Whenever there must be a door kind of on your side where you're facing us, and whenever anybody opens that door, it's like a scary movie. It's like this shadow where it's like in the Psycho where somebody's going to come in with a big knife and be like, "Oh, Sean, look! Don't look behind you." So
yeah. Poor timing on my part. That was the come home from school, get ready for lacrosse, leave, forget something, come back. So
no, not at all. I love that shadow. It's
great.
It's a good one. So where do we find you?
Sean Herrero online. My email is right here, and Adventure Lenders on Instagram. That's it. All over the internet.
Love it. And Haley, in a dark room, it looks like you're in a dark room right there. Turn on the light. How do people find us when they need help and assistance?
We are Elevation SF on Instagram, Elevation Real Estate Facebook page, YouTube page. Just Google us or Google Eddie O'Sullivan and we'll pop right up.
Awesome.
And you can find all these graphs and everything in our blog on elevationrealestate.com.
And we send that out actually on a monthly newsletter. If you want to sign up for that, just shoot us an email and we'll get you on that. It's a good deep dive every month. So, all right. Awesome.
Sean.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Cheers, Haley. See you. Take it easy.
All right. Bye, you guys.